Hey guys, this is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Please like, share, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And leave any comments if you like. Today we are welcoming back somebody because we messed up the first time with the recording things, and we had a little tech difficulty. So I'm welcoming back Nick Parisi, good guy, great cigar partner, and he's has a very interesting background and great author. And I welcome him to the show once again.
Thanks, Nick. How you doing?
All right, my man, pretty good. Um, Thank you for coming back on the show, even though we had a little difficulty last time. It's good to see you. Um, so I'm going to just give some people just an idea, a little bit about your background, so they know. Um, Nick comes from a background of a lot of guys that were in the life at one time, uh, grandfathers, uncles, so forth and so on. And he put together two great books about that history. The one of them, which I've almost finished reading, which I really liked a lot, called Mafia Confession, which is right behind him. And then the recent one called City of Betrayal, which I yet to dig into, but I'm dying to. I can't wait. So, my first question, Nick, is what drove you to divulge all this information?
You know, I was doing a genealogy project about my family, and there's a lot of stuff out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of newspaper articles about some of the crimes that were committed back in the past by my grandfather and uncles and stuff. And then I came across a documentary that was done, and I wasn't really happy with the way they portrayed my family. They were really biased against my family and more biased towards the other family that that my family was fighting with for over 10 years. So I called the person up and I had some words with them, and I ended up, instead of just getting mad, I decided just to get even, and I decided to start writing my own book to get the story out there correctly. The other person did a great job, but like I said, they were leaning a little bit more towards the other family, and they didn't get the full story out about my family and the actual events. So I wanted to get something out there that was a little bit more equal to both sides.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So you're speaking about your family, meaning the Parisi family.
correct. Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, this is just for the audience. I know, just for the audience to understand. Um, Now, when it comes to that kind of lifestyle and stuff like that, growing up in that era or that time, surrounded by all this, um, what was your first like impression of when you start to realize what's really going on? Did you have to make it sort of like a choice, which direction you want to go in?
You know, growing up as a kid, it really was like the movie Goodfellas, where everybody says, I always knew I wanted to grow up and be a gangster. Nobody was thinking about, college or anything like that. We all wanted to be like, be like the cool guys in the corner in the shark skin suits and all, the gold bracelets and Rolex and everything. We all wanted to be that guy, me and all my friends. And, I think that's just, what we looked up to. We saw in the movies, we saw it on the street corners, and that was our goal in life, was to be like that.
But you touched you how would I put it? You dipped your toe into the water, so to speak, a little bit. But you were smart enough to avoid getting in too deep, so to speak. What caused that to happen?
I got married at a young age. I had a kid at 20 years old and got married. And the one good thing that came from that marriage, other than the kids, was I kept out of trouble. She knew where I was at night, so I wasn't out hanging out around with the wrong people in the wrong places. It made it really difficult for me to hang out with those kind of people. And yeah, when I look back at my record, my police record, there's a big blank for 15 years, and it's exactly the amount of time I was married. So before I got married, I had a pretty lengthy, felony record, and right afterwards, all the way up until maybe 2, 3 years ago. I had quite the record with a nice 15-year break in the middle of marriage. So I guess that was a good thing.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
She kept you on the straight and narrow pretty much.
Yeah, I probably would have ended up like a lot of my friends. A lot of them are, doing life sentences, and a lot of them should be doing a life sentence, but for various reasons they're not. And we've talked about it. I definitely would have been right in the middle of everything with those guys, and the guys I write about in the new book, City of Betrayal. I would have been right in the middle of all that stuff with them. And unfortunately, I didn't get involved because they're all doing life in prison now, multiple life sentences.
Well, growing up, was there any particular guy on the street that you were closest to outside of your family?
Outside of my family, I grew up with everybody. I mean, I grew up with the Puglianos and the Fioris and the Giases and the Arlotta and everybody from Springfield and West Springfield. I'm either related to them. I grew up with them since a child. Um, I encountered them, hanging out in the area, or I just everybody in my book I've met at least once or grew up with. So I don't write about anybody I haven't actually met.
Well, because I read Mafia Confession, which is very interesting, opened my eyes because the Springfield crew basically is kind of unknown. It was never really, you know, you hear about the Gambino family, Luke Casey family, whatever. The Springfield crew has always been a little bit under the radar. Um, what can you attribute that to?
I just think all the media focuses on New York City, and you have the five families. And the thing is, Springfield is part of the five families. It's
Hmm.
it's a wing of the Genovese crime family. They've been around since 1923. They came into Springfield. I write about how they came to Springfield,
Hmm.
and Vito Genovese and Costello and Miranda. They all took over Springfield back in the Prohibition days. And yeah, I mean, but the media seems to focus on the same five families in New York, and they focus on Chicago, and that's it. And there's so many small families out there around the entire country that they don't really talk about. They're just so we just keep hearing the same stories over and over again, and I personally enjoy reading about stuff like Kansas City I'd never heard of, or Los Angeles, and things like that. There's big families. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of crimes, a lot of mob hits, and Springfield per capita is the number one mob space. There's more mobsters per capita than any other city in America. Bigger than New York City. Springfield is quite the force. Back in the day.
Well, Springfield's in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yes.
So just to let people understand. Um, Now, Massachusetts, of course, has their own crew, has a Boston crew. You got the Julio brothers, you got the Winter Hill gang. The
Yeah, the Patriarcha family.
Patriarchal family is correct. Now, did they have any kind of influence with the Springfield crew? Was there any kind of either butting heads or did they work together?
Yeah, kind of both. I mean, the Patriarch family came afterwards, coming out of Worcester and Boston, and
Mhm.
and they're in Rhode Island now. They're a separate family. You have Genovese family in Springfield. I'm from West Springfield, the other side of the river, across the bridge, and that was more controlled by the Patriarcha family and the Pugliano family. And you have guys like you have one guy. He's one of the Pugliano brothers. He's a made member of the Genovese family, and he's also an associate of the Patriarcha family in Rhode Island. And so they've been butting heads for years. It's definitely two separate territories, but they also do a lot of work together. So when it makes sense, they work together.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, at the current time, I know it's 2024 now. The mob, the general is not what it used to be, as we all know. Are they somewhat still a force over there in Springfield, or not really?
Yeah, Springfield, it was kind of done in 2010 when Anthony Arlotta flipped. He became
Hmm.
a governor informant. And once that happened, the Genovese family kind of wiped their hands of Springfield. They didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't make another member since that day. Um, you still have um, you still have mafia in Springfield, but they're more cowboys where they operate on their own. They don't answer to anybody. They don't answer to New York anymore. They don't answer to the Genovese family. People kind of stay clear. That's why I wrote City of Betrayal, because 98% of the people in Springfield informed in one way, shape, or other. You know, they all became informants of some sort, or they talked, or they did something to where the Genovese family wants nothing to do with Springfield. So, you know, you could come to Springfield today, start a loan sharking operation, booking, and you just be on your own. You don't have to kick up to anybody. It's a open city since 2010.
So basically they're all freelancers,
Yeah,
basically.
it's all freelancers now.
Wow, that's pretty
And
crazy.
there's some really tough guys, and there's some guys that should have got made. You know, back 20 years ago, they should have got made, and they were going to get made, and they're still operating. And like I said, Genovese family left in 2010, so they didn't get made, but they would have got made. There's
Mhm.
some strong families still going in Springfield. They're just not made members.
Wow, okay, interesting. Um, Being that the case that you came from that kind of bloodline, um, I know you told me that, like you said, you got married, that kind of took you away from that lifestyle. Did you, in that 15-year time or even after that, was there any small desire to ever go back to that? Because like you said, the glamour, the money, the this, the that, especially now with all these freelancers where you can do whatever you want. Uh, did you ever get that little itch?
Yeah, I actually did get involved in a way. I ended up in California after my divorce in like 2004, 2005. And I got involved with the 1% outlaw motorcycle clubs. And I actually became a national officer in one of those clubs, really high ranking member of that club, international club. And I look at it as the biker clubs like that. They're kind of like the mafia on two wheels. The way I look at it, they operate the same way, and that's what we had out in California. We didn't really have the mafia out here, the Italian mafia. So I got involved in the 1% outlaw clubs, and it's the exact same thing. I got really involved in marijuana, just like my grandfather and uncles. They were bootleggers, so I became a modern day bootlegger, and I was involved in heavily in the marijuana business. And I can talk about it because I actually got convicted of that. Just got off probation probably like 3 months ago. I've been on and off probation like forever for that kind of stuff, and house arrest and all kinds of convictions and stuff like that. But yeah, I found some trouble out here. Yeah, I did.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So in other words, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
No, no, yeah, I guess it doesn't. No.
Okay. Now with the new book, well, let me go back to Mafia Confession. Mafia Confession is a book that, just for the audience anyway, it was interesting for me anyway, because as a mob expert and interested in that genre, Mafia Confession was a very interesting book because it really went way, way back. It gave you like a footprint of how this whole thing started.
Yeah,
And a lot of the names in there, I never even knew them. Half of them I didn't know. And which is cool because I love reading about something different, something new, not the same old stories. So that was pretty interesting. The amount of research you did on that must have been unbelievably extensive. How the heck did you get all that info? So, I mean, I know you had memoirs or something, I think from your grandfather, I think, if I'm right.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, it started off as a genealogy project. So I probably got 100 newspaper articles, and we're talking Prohibition. We're talking the 1920s. There was no TV back then, so when they did a newspaper article about something, it was like three full pages, and tons of pictures, interviews with people that are accused of crimes. Very, very detailed interviews back then, multiple pages, and every day, every single day. And so there's tons of wealth of information out there. But I also had, court documents. I had police archives, and I had a diary from my great uncle while he sat in prison. My great uncle Joe Parisi, he was the top bootlegger in West Springfield, and he went against the head of the Springfield family.
Mhm.
He was called the king of bootleggers, Carlo Siniscalchi, and they had a disagreement over some alcohol. And Joe Parisi went over there, saw him sitting in his limo a couple of days before Christmas. Hundreds of people walking around shopping in the shopping district, Main Street, Springfield. Told him, hey, do you got my money? And the last time he went for his money, he got slapped in the face and a gun put in his face. This time here, he was ready, and Carlos started reaching for his gun, and my uncle, put 6 bullets in his chest and killed him right in front of hundreds of people. And that was the start of it. I think I consider that the start of the mafia in Springfield, because when he did that and he killed the king of bootleggers, Vito Genovese in New York, he sent his consigliore's brother to Springfield to take over. Antonio Miranda, who's the brother of Michael Miranda. Michael Miranda was the consigliere of Vito Genovese, Manuel Costello, and Luciano, and all those guys. And they took over Springfield, and that's the whole start of the Genovese family running Springfield. So
Yeah,
I
so
credit that one shooting to that happening.
yeah, that's a lot of people don't even know that. That's what's so interesting about that book. It gives you a good glimpse of where the seed was planted and how it grew, pretty much.
Right, right.
Now, with City of Betrayal, which just came out like very recently, correct?
Yeah, it's been out for 2 weeks.
Two
Two
weeks now,
weeks.
that's right. Yeah, so that book, City of Betrayal, picks up where Mafia Confession more or less kind of left
Yep.
off. But it's more modern, where a lot of the names may be familiar to some people. Anthony Rolata being one of them. Bruno being another one, and the Gaius brothers, like you mentioned earlier. Um, Now, with City of Betrayals, is a different aspect, because I think with that you have different ethnic groups involved, not just the Italians. You got
Right.
a lot of different other nationalities running around. So, because a lot of people have this wrong image that they think the mob is just Italian, but it ain't. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, the mob definitely isn't just Italian. As far as getting made, yeah, you need to be Italian to be a made member in the mafia. But you know, you could have 6 or 7 made members, but then you could have 150 associates, and the associates are the ones doing the work. And the Springfield mob had some really tough enforcers that were Greek. My good friends from school that I grew up with, the Gius brothers, they ran with Anthony Arolata. Um, you got Rex Cunningham, really, really tough Irishman, half Irish, half Italian. His uncle is Mario Fiore, who's the oldest living gangster in America. He just turned 100 2 months ago, and he's
Oh
still a
wow.
made member of the mob.
Oh
And he's
shit.
still, he's still active in Springfield. When I say active, I mean he's still kicking, and he's at the pastry shop having his espresso and meeting with everybody. He's not active committing crimes, I'm sure, but yeah, he's still alive and well, and he goes all the way he goes all the way back to my original book, because the people that got killed in the original book are his uncles and his aunt. Um, his family is the family my family was fighting back then, the Albano family, the Fiore family. His uncle gets killed in a barber chair in Springfield. His aunt gets machine gunned by 150 bullets. The widow of Carlo Siniscalchi, who Joe Parisi killed. So many of the people in the first book, you'll see their grandkids, you'll see their nephews show up in the second book, because, like you said a little bit earlier, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it's the exact same names from 1920s are the same names you see in 2000. It's the same family, the Albano family, the Fioris, the Santinellos, the Manzis. It just keeps going and going. It's all the same people.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. Um, with City of Betrayal and Mafia Confession, you have these two books are out currently. Um, have you had any ideas of anything, um, taking these books in another medium, like a
Yeah, I
film?
mean, it's possible. Mafia Confession just won an award yesterday. a Reader's Favorite Award. It got second place out of thousands and thousands of books that were submitted for its cover. Um, got a silver medal for best best cover for nonfiction, and the overall book got a honorable mention. And with that, I'm going to be getting a literary agent out of New York City. So I'm anxious. I just found this out yesterday morning that I submitted the book probably 10 months ago, and the awards were yesterday. And I went through the whole list of awards and didn't see anything. And then got towards the end, and there it is, Mafia Confession. Silver medal, best cover, and yeah. So hopefully that literary agent that I'm going to get from New York is going to maybe get me into a documentary or something. I've had a lot of people read the book and say that would be an incredible documentary or movie. But
Yeah, that's for
as
sure.
you know, that's hard to do. So I'm not, not putting a lot into it. But that'd be the great thing for me to see a
Yes, for
documentary
sure.
made.
Well, based on what I mentioned earlier, there are some guys that are out of that life that are still around that you wrote about and spoke about. One being Anthony Arlotta. Have you discussed, has he commented on the book? Has he gave you any his thoughts, his critique, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm friends with Anthony Arlotta. You know, which is kind of funny because I'm from West Springfield, and he was part of the reason my friend the Gius brothers are in prison right now. He's not the only reason, but he's the reason why they're never going to get out. And originally, I hated the guy. I didn't want anything to do with the guy. A lot of people like to call him names and stuff, and I'm not a keyboard warrior, so I don't do that. But you know, I, I I contacted him when I was writing this book, and I said I wanted to get his side of the story. Any good author is going to talk to everybody, and I told him within the first minute. Let me tell you something right now. I'm from West Side. I grew up with Freddie Gius, his younger brother Ty. They're friends of mine. I don't like what you did, but I want you to know right off the bat where I'm coming from. And so that's all good. Everything. Thanks for telling me. And we ended up working for weeks together on his side of the story. I got both sides of the story, and yeah, we've gone out for drinks many times, and yeah, a good author is going to listen to both sides, and that's what I did. And I'm going to let other people form their own opinion. I'm just going to put the facts out there. Anything I wrote in my book, I made sure was backed up with facts I found in either court documents, police wiretaps. If I couldn't back it up, I don't. It's not in my book. So when you read my book, you decide if what Anthony did was right, wrong, if he should have done something different. Was Al Bruno, Big Al Bruno, the person that got killed? He was our former mob boss. You can make your own decision. Was he an informant or not? Who called the hit? All that stuff. I put the facts in there and let people decide. But yeah, everybody in the book I've met with and I've sat down with.
Well, interesting you say that, how you get both sides of the story.
Yeah,
Now, getting both sides of the story, which I've kind of done the same in mine and one of my third book, but how do you, I mean, I know what I do, but I'm wondering what you do. How do you decide which one to pick? It's, that's
I
like a
don't
tough
pick.
one. You don't
Yeah, I
pick.
don't. I don't pick.
Okay.
No, what I do is I put the facts in the book. Like I said, I make sure. See, before I talk to somebody, I kind of already know the story. I
Hmm.
know the story because there's so many wiretaps out there for the modern day mob. So what was said back and forth. Because the wiretaps are all public. The things that were said in court, the evidence that was put in front of them, and just from growing up on the street and people knowing the stories. So when I talk to people, I kind of already know what the story is, and when I talk to them, I get more. I really get more details is what I do. When I talk to a person like Arolata, we went to the actual site where they killed a few people, and I get the details of okay, so the newspaper reported who did it, how they did it, and all that stuff, but I get into the details of the planning of the hit, how they set the person up, the words that were said back and forth, the very details of every crime. I probably got like 10 different mob hits in my book. And I've talked to at least one person that was there at the mob hit for every single one of my hits. And I go into detail of all the planning and the hit itself and what happened afterwards and stuff that nobody's ever heard before. There's a lot of stuff no one's ever talked about, stuff that doesn't, the reporters don't know about because, the people that talk to the reporters, they're just trying to get their side of the story out, what they want the reporter to write. And the people I talk to, I've known them for years, so they're comfortable with me. They know I'll get the story out there correct in my book. I'm not gonna make up stuff and make people look bad. So there's a lot of trust with me to put the right stuff in my book. They know I'm going to put the truth in there. Sometimes they put stuff they don't like and they ask me to take it out and I don't. It is what it is.
Yeah.
If it's fact, if it's true, it's going in. Unless it's going to hurt, their children or their wives or their family. But if it's just, if this is the fact of what happened, it's going in. And they know this going, when I do this.
Well, being that being the case, um, isn't it sometimes a little bit, how you say the word I'm looking for here, risky putting out any kind of information that may be coming from a source but not documented? Isn't that kind of like you said, you get interviews from other people, they're
Right.
saying the story. Is it, I mean, I know I came across that when I was doing mine. Um, and I was told, don't write that, whatever, it might be a problem, with whatever, with the feds or whatever, anybody reads it, they may sue you, and I took it, took a few things out. Did you ever come across that?
No, no, not really, because what I'm writing about is already public information. Like the Al Bruno hit, that's all public information, stuff like that. All the hits that Aerolado was involved in, the hits back in the 70s, it's all public information. So I'm not writing anything that, people don't know. I'm just getting into more details that people haven't heard. Um, people like people like Anthony Aerolado, he's got an immunity deal with the government. So when I write something and I quote Anthony Aerolado, it's not going to get him in any more trouble because he's got immunity. He's already pled guilty to all these crimes. And the crimes back in the 70s and 80s and 90s that I talk about, I talk to people who just got out of prison after doing 30, 40 years in prison. So they've already pled guilty or they've been convicted of these crimes. They've already done their time, so they can't get in trouble a second time. So yeah, there's stuff I know that I would never put in the book of other crimes that are not public or well known. Everything in my book is public information though, but the details I get into are the number before heard scenes. Like Aerolata, he killed his brother-in-law, Gary Westerman.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
yeah, and that information that's public information. He pled guilty to it, and then he testified against the Gius brothers and Emilio Fusco, which is why those guys are never getting out of prison, unfortunately. But we went to the actual site where they killed him, and he brought me through how they lured him to the barn, how they shot him in the back of the head and it bounced off his skull because it was a 22, how they bashed him with shovels, how they dragged him to a hole that they already had dug for somebody else. And what happened afterwards, how they cleaned up the scene and left. Those kind of details, it's not going to incriminate anybody because three people are in prison for life because of it, and one person has an immunity deal. So it's not going to cause any problems for anybody. It's just giving the reader it's letting the reader kind of be right there while the crime is happening.
Right.
What
Well,
I'm doing.
yeah, giving them a visual. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. Um, and now with the way things are currently in that world, um, and the how the public perceives the mob in general, where it's not so prevalent anymore. I mean, in the press, you don't hear about things anymore. It's pretty quiet. It's been quiet for a while now.
Yeah.
Outside of Canada, they're nuts up there. But here in the States, it's pretty a quiet thing. Now, do you think it's because the mob is dying out, or is it just being quiet? What is your perception?
Man, that's a tough one. They're definitely being quiet. They're maybe finally learning from their mistakes. But what are you going to do these days? I mean, everybody's got a stupid camera phone. You want to talk about people calling people rats. The freaking rats are these freaking kids with their phones, with these camera phones. You see two people start arguing at a baseball game, and you got 55 people standing around them with their stupid cameras out, hoping that they start throwing punches. Those are the keyboard warrior rats that I can't stand. So what are you going to do today with everybody's got a camera phone? Loan sharking, you can get a payday loan these days. You're going to bet on a football game. You can go online and do it. You can do it on your phone. I mean, extortion. I mean, man, you even go up to somebody right now and say, "Hey, give me the $25 you owe me," and you grab them by the shirt. When you say it, you're going to prison for 10 years. I mean, things aren't the same. That you can't have fun anymore.
But,
So, I mean, things aren't the same that they used to be. So, what are you going to do? So the mob's probably, more involved in like computer crimes and stuff like that. They're still probably shaking down, the strip clubs and, things like that. But it's just hard to, it's really hard just in general to break the law these days because of the surveillance that's available.
yeah, you can't earn anymore. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. And then you got Rico, you got Rico that, so you just being involved in something, even though you didn't do it yourself, because I've been in trouble myself. I told you I was involved with the 1% clubs and I was a high ranking member. So somebody that I never even met before that, you know, 5 or 6 layers beneath me in the club, they go out and commit a crime. And guess what? I'm getting conspiracy because I said, they're saying, well, you told them to do it. That's automatic. They go right after the top guys, for conspiracy. And it's the same thing. They do something that gets 10 years. They're coming after me for 10 years, plus a gang enhancement, give me 20 years just because I'm a leader in a club. So it's the same thing as the mob. You got some guy doing stupid shit. He may be selling some drugs in the street. Well, the boss, who's probably never even met the guy because he's so far down the food chain, he's going to go to prison for the same sentence because of something, under him. That's all the Rico charge today.
Hmm.
Rico is what killed the mob. Rico and the informants is what
Well,
killed the mob.
now that's the mob. Now let me just switch gears here because we were talking about bikers. Now I know the one percenters, the Hells Angels, the Nomads, all these clubs are still around. Um, do you think would you think that applies to the bikers as well, biker gangs as well, that they're not as prevalent as they used to be?
No, I think they're even stronger than they used to be. The
Oh,
biker
really?
clubs are very strong, but you got to remember, the mob is a group of people who came together for one reason, and that's to make money.
Hmm.
Biker clubs are not put together for that reason. Biker clubs are put together because people like to ride motorcycles and party and have a good time. But when you end up with 50, 60 guys in a group, that's a lot of power. And then, you have a few bad apples in that group of 50, 60 guys who are drug dealers or doing all kinds of different things, you know, with an army of 50, 60 guys behind them just in their town alone. Forget about the whole country where you got 1,000 army members behind you. They become a force to be reckoned with. So, the biker clubs are they're definitely, people joke, yeah, we're not, but we're not gang members, we're biker enthusiasts. Well, yeah, that's why I got involved in the clubs. I want to ride motorcycle with 50 other guys and have a good time and party with girls and have fun. But yeah, there's some people are criminals in those clubs, but the club was not put together to be a criminal organization. So that's one thing that's different. And you mentioned one club and the red and white, and they get away from the whole Rico thing. You never see those guys go down for Rico because they don't have like a hierarchy. Like they don't have a president and a vice president. Every single chapter around the country is individual. So you don't have the Rico coming in where they can take out other people because there is no hierarchy in those clubs. in that particular club. They're
Mhm.
smart about it. There's other clubs, their rivals that do have, people that are considered bosses, same as the mafia. And when you have that situation going, that's when you end up getting, the RICO brought in. That's when you get conspiracy charges. But going back to your original question, yeah, I think the biker clubs are very powerful, and especially in Canada, they're ruthless up in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what's my third book going to be. And right now, it's probably going to be the connection of the bikers and the mafia and how they work together over the years.
Well, there, like you said, you mentioned Canada. I know Montreal, you got Rock Machine, Hells Angels. You have a couple of different, the Nomads, I think, are up there as well. There's a lot of different clubs there that in the past have worked and fought against the Montreal crew. The
Oh yeah,
Rizzuto had a lot of problems with them, and had to, Vito Rizzuto, who was the boss at the time, did have to have a lot of, he had issues with them and had to, you know, straighten things out and make deals with them that would be fair. And from what I understand, especially with the Hells Angels, they were against um, any members doing coke. From what I understand, cocaine was a no-no. From what I understand, whether that was true or not, this is what I heard from somebody who was, with them many years back. Um, would you agree with that?
no, that's no. I mean, no, just like any, it has nothing to do with the biker clubs. Just people do drugs, and a, a party lifestyle club like any club. I won't even say one club, any club. To say you're not allowed to do drugs, that's kind of hilarious because it's never going to happen. Because, like I said, the main reason you join those clubs is because you want to ride Harleys and you want to party, and people are doing drugs and having fun with a lot of women, and yeah, drugs is a big part of it. So yeah, so it was just like the mob. The mob came out and said no one's allowed to sell drugs. Well, everybody was selling drugs. It's just you have to come out and say it's not allowed, and then when you get your envelope every week, you don't even ask how they made the money. You just take your money and be happy with it. You don't ask where it came from, and yeah. So there's this that no drug rule is hilarious in the mob and the bike clubs. It's not real. It's just in cases of wiretap listening is what it is.
Yeah, that is kind of true. Um, I know because like guys like the best example I can think of is like Angelo Bruno in Philly. Angelo
Yeah,
Bruno was very much against drugs, but he really was. But when the Greek crew in South Philly were dealing peace, they ran the PCP trade pretty much,
yeah,
and whatever money they made, they kicked up to Bruno. So he knew where it was coming from. So if you're against drugs, why are you taking money that came from drugs? It's an
yeah.
it's like an oxymoron. It is.
Well, who's going to turn away $1 million? I mean, without drugs in the modern day, the mafia, how much money are they going to make? I mean, there's some good scams they had going on, but nothing compared to drugs. It's the same as when the mafia started with prohibition and alcohol. They were making money, doing their black hand stuff. But once alcohol became illegal and they started selling alcohol, they all became multimillionaires. Al Capone, is a good example. And it's the same as the modern day. The mafia got a resurgence in the 80s because cocaine became so prevalent, and and that's where they started making tons of money again. But it was also their downfall because it came with 40-50 year prison sentences if you got caught. So yeah, you're going to come out in public and say drugs aren't allowed because you don't want to go to prison for 50 years. And if somebody that's under you gets caught with a large amount of drugs, they're going to be looking at 40, 50, 60 years in prison. The more apt to become an informant or flip.
Mhm.
Because prior to that, you get popped for loan sharking or booking or extortion, you're going to do 3 to 5 years. And guys in that lifestyle, they can do that standing on their head. Well, 3 to 5 years became 30 to 50 years. That's a little bit different. And that's when people started flipping.
That's true.
And that's the only reason why they said, oh, I'm against drugs, because they don't want people to have a reason to flip.
That's true. That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, well, just on the term rats, okay, which I mean, I personally have my little view on that. Now, a lot of people, have their terms about rats, stool pigeon, or whatever. I don't really like the word personally. And I have a lot of friends that came from that life, and they, changed, became government witnesses. And I don't approve of somebody flipping because that's a life you chose, and you took the oath, and that's what it is. It is what it is. Take the time that you got to take, and that's the end of it. But a lot of times I see friends of mine that have explained to me their story, why they did what they did, what was the reason that they did something. And sometimes I hear them and I say, wait a minute, you know what? If I was in their shoes, I'd probably do the same thing.
yeah.
So what is your um, take on that? What is your personal view on that when these guys are stuck in a situation where, I'll give you the best example, like Larry Maslin, who's a good friend of mine. Larry was doing time, but when he heard the guy who was under was an informant for 40 years, that changes your whole perception. Wait a minute, you want me to be quiet? Meantime, you've been a rat for 40 years? I don't blame him.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. You kind of nailed it on the head. I mean, you got these keyboard warriors who like to call people rats. I never call somebody a rat. They're government informants. They're cooperating witnesses. And unless you've been in their shoes, don't say you'd be a man and do the time in prison, because all these guys make these stupid comments on podcast and
Hmm.
make comments on Facebook. They've never been looking at life in prison. you know, spending the next 60, 70 years in prison. They've never had that situation. So yeah, there's a lot of guys, and my friends, the Gius brothers, are good examples. They're stand-up guys, and they're doing multiple life sentences because they kept their mouth shut. A couple of tough Greek kids, and but unless you've been in their shoes, don't go out and start calling people names. If you have been somebody that's sat in jail for 20, 30 years, yeah, if you want to call these people names, go ahead. You earn the right. There's a lot of stand-up guys who earn the right to call somebody else another name. But if you never did even a night in prison, in jail, don't go on there, calling people names. It's a joke. I've looked at 10 to 14 years for things I did, and it's tough. It's tough sitting there knowing that you're going to sit in jail for the next 14 years. And can you imagine looking at the death penalty? You guys got you got guys like Sammy the Bull Gravano. He's the most famous, if you want to say rat in the world. And look at his situation though. I mean, the guy kept his mouth shut. He killed 19 people for John Gotti. He was doing his time in prison, still keeping his mouth shut. And then they play a tape
Hmm.
to him of John Gotti saying, he's a stand-up guy. He keeps his mouth shut, but just in case he might talk in the future, we never know. We better whack him. This guy's keeping his mouth shut and he's doing his time for Gotti, and Gotti's, talking about killing him just in case he might talk someday. So what are you going to do? You're going to keep your mouth shut and sit in jail for the rest of your life? Some other guy that's going to kill you now? So, I mean, that's a tough situation. It's probably not a popular comment I just made, but, you got to look at the facts. You got to look at the facts here. And city betrayal is called city betrayal for a reason. All the stand-up guys in my book have also talked in one way or the other. They may have not been informants, but they've been buddies with the law enforcement, the feds. They've slipped information to the feds against their rivals, against their enemies, against other people. And everybody is doing something because everybody wants to win at the end. They want to stay out of jail. They want to make a lot of money. And if talking to the feds, if talking to the police, if slipping some information to hurt somebody that helps you, you got to remember these guys are con men. The mobsters are con men. Their whole goal in life is to trick somebody so they get your money. And if they can trick the police, if they can trick anybody and is staying out of jail and making more money, they're going to do it. And that's just a fact.
Well, going back to the really quick on the rat issue. Now, when it comes to what happened to Whitey Bulger, when I think it was Freddie, I think that killed him, if I'm correct.
Freddie killed Whitey. He just admitted to it finally about a month ago.
Now, when Freddie killed him, from what I understood, one of the reasons was because he was an informant. Now, is that accurate?
That's the story that the newspapers will tell you, but
Mhm.
that's not the real story. Yeah, Freddie really did hate rats, and Freddie's doing life in prison because he kept his mouth shut. He is a stand-up guy, but his cellmate in prison was a guy named Weichel, who was part of the Winter Hill gang under Whitey Bulger, and he was in prison for 33 years for a crime he did not commit, and he was set up by Whitey Bulger for you know Whitey Bulger had somebody killed, and he went and told his Fed buddy Connolly that, hey, this Weichel's the one that did it. They put Weichel in prison for 33 years. They finally, the person who did it on their deathbed admitted to it and said he didn't do it. So they let him out of prison a couple of years ago, and they actually gave him $33 million for being wrongly in prison for 33 years.
Wow.
But Freddie was so pissed that his good friend in prison was in there wrongfully by Whitey Bulger that, when Whitey Bulger showed up, he killed him within hours of him showing up. Whitey showed up at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And when they opened his cell in the morning, he was beat to death with a lock in a pillowcase, and his eyes were gouged out of his head. And yeah, he did hate rats, but the real reason was because he put one of his buddies in prison for life for a crime he didn't commit.
Okay, so that was his motivation. I get it
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I
I
heard
don't
that.
even think that's out there. That's just stuff I know. That hasn't been even reported, I don't think, in the newspapers, but that's the real reason. That's kind of the stuff my book is about. It's the stuff you don't hear about, the inside information, the stuff that's not in the newspaper. They like to say, Freddie hated rats, so he killed Sonny, he killed Whitey Bulger. So that's really easy to say. But the real reason is, his cellmate.
Right. Well, it is because, well, it is indirectly that reason because Whitey Bulger, you know, not ratted him out, but he informed on something, even though it wasn't true. So he got another guy put away for something he never did. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's pretty freaking messed up. So
Oh
imagine,
yeah,
like you were saying earlier, and this guy no less didn't say anything about anything. He kept his mouth shut too, even though he's going away for something he didn't do. So that,
exactly.
so if anybody's a stand-up guy, I think that guy's Gary. I think was a huge stand-up guy, if anybody.
Oh
And
yeah, oh yeah.
I think Freddie. I think from what from I remember this story that you told me. I've heard this before, um, but I think probably Freddie respected Gary a lot for the fact that here he is doing 33 years, but he still never said anything. You know,
Right.
I'm assuming he respected him at that point for him to
Oh,
even
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, coming to the end of the show, where would you like people? Where can people go find out more about Nick Parisi? Find out more about their books, where to buy them, all that information.
Yeah, I have a website, authornicholasparisi.com. You can read about me. You can read about my books. Um, you can order a signed copy. I'll personalize it to you and mail it to you. You can also get my books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere they sell books. Yeah, the newest book just came out 2 weeks ago. People are loving it right now, and get the original book if you want to know the full history of the mafia in Springfield, Massachusetts. Start off with Mafia Confession. You'll see how it started during Prohibition. Read about my family. Read about all the future families, and then finish with City of Betrayal and see how the mafia ended in 2010 when people became informants and cooperators. And so, yeah, it's the rise and fall of the Springfield Mafia within those two books.
Outside of the books, is there anything new that's coming up for you, in connection with this work?
No, I'm just doing podcast and doing, we met you out in Vegas doing,
Yeah.
doing shows and book signing tours and stuff like that. But no, I'm retired. The government retired me a couple years ago from the marijuana industry, and I'm enjoying retirement. And I bought a vacation home, and I'm going back and forth between the two states and enjoying my life retired, staying out of trouble.
Good man, good man. Well, Nick, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure, as always, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon, I hope.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have another cigar and lots of whiskey like the last time.
Hell yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks a lot, Nick. I appreciate
Take
it.
care, buddy.
You too, my man.